Imagine you've spent 5 years in a concrete box, replaying the worst 4 minutes of your life every single hour. You finally get out, and all you want is to catch a glimpse of the one piece of your heart that's still beating out in the world. A child who doesn't even know your name. But there's a catch. The entire world has decided that you are the villain. Not just a person who made a mistake, but the physical embodiment of a tragedy. This is the heavy, suffocating atmosphere that Colleen Hoover drops us into from page 1 of her novel, Reminders of Him. It's a book that asks a terrifyingly uncomfortable question. Is there a limit to what we can forgive? Or more importantly, who gets to decide when a debt to society has been paid in full? In the world of contemporary fiction, Colleen Hoover has built a reputation for what people call the ugly cry. But in this book, she's doing something much more surgical. She's dissecting the anatomy of a second chance. We follow Kenna, a woman who is essentially a ghost, returning to a town that wishes she had stayed dead. She's looking for her daughter, Diem. But she's met with a wall of steel and grief. This isn't just a story about a mother's love. It's an exploration of the villain narrative. We all love to categorize people. We like our good guys and our bad guys to stay in their lanes because it makes the world feel safe. But Colleen Hoover forces us to sit in the passenger seat with the person who caused the wreck, making us realize that the line between a tragic accident and a criminal act is often thinner than we'd like to admit. The first big idea this book tackles is the concept of the proxy war of forgiveness. Imagine you're standing in the middle of a seesaw. On one side, you have the memory of the person who was lost, and on the other, you have the living person trying to move forward. In this book, the character of Ledger Ward represents that middle point. He was the best friend of the man Kenna accidentally killed, and he's now the protector of the daughter she left behind. Through Ledger, Hoover shows us how we often withhold forgiveness, not because we aren't capable of it, but because we feel like forgiving someone is a betrayal of the person who isn't here to speak for themselves. Ledger feels like every ounce of empathy he gives to Kenna is a scoop of dirt he's throwing on his best friend's grave. This book brilliantly illustrates that forgiveness isn't a gift you give to the guilty party. It's a release valve for the person holding onto the anger. Hoover challenges us to see that holding onto a grudge doesn't actually honor the dead. It just keeps the living in a state of arrested development. The second major theme is the weight of the unspoken, which Hoover executes through the use of letters. Kenna writes letters to Scotty, the man she loved and lost, knowing he will never read them. In a digital age where we are constantly performing our lives for others, this book reminds us of the power of private grief. These letters serve as a metaphor for the things we can't say to the world, because the world has already decided who we are. To the town, Kenna is a headline, a court case, a cautionary tale. But in those letters, she is a human being who is hurting. It's a powerful commentary on how we often strip people of their complexity once they've failed our moral tests. This book suggests that we all have a reminders of him, or reminders of her, a collection of thoughts and regrets that we carry around like a backpack full of stones. The question Hoover poses is, when do we finally get to put the backpack down? Then we have to talk about the good man paradox. Ledger is the ultimate good guy in this narrative, but the book puts him in an impossible position. He falls for the one person he is supposed to hate. This creates a fascinating tension that many of us face in real life, the conflict between our tribal loyalty and our individual morality. Should he stick with the community that has collectively shunned Kenna, or should he follow his own eyes and see that she has changed? Colleen Hoover uses this romance not just for the sake of a love story, but as a vehicle for social commentary. She's asking if it's possible to love someone while acknowledging the damage they've done. It's a messy gray area that most romance novels shy away from, but this book dives into it headfirst. Now let's get into the critique, because this is where the book becomes truly transformative. While the emotional beats of the story are incredibly effective, there is a legitimate conversation to be had about the Hoover formula. Some critics argue that the book leans heavily into emotional manipulation, that it sets up a scenario so devastating that you have no choice but to feel something. There's also the question of how the legal and foster care systems are portrayed. In the book, Kenna's struggle to see her daughter is framed through personal dynamics and local grudges. In reality, the legal barriers for a convicted felon trying to regain parental rights are often much more bureaucratic and soul-crushing than a simple disliking from the grandparents. By focusing so much on the personal drama, does the book gloss over the systemic issues that trap people in their past mistakes? Furthermore, some readers find the resolution a bit too neat for a story that deals with such jagged, raw themes. Life rarely offers a bow as pretty as the one Colleen Hoover provides. However, you could argue that the neatness is the point. In a world that is often cruel and unforgiving, maybe we need stories that show us the best case scenario. Maybe the purpose of this book isn't to be a gritty documentary, but to be a roadmap for what radical empathy could look like if we actually practiced it. It's a polarizing take, but it's what makes her work so discussable. She isn't writing for the literary elite. She's writing for the human heart. And the heart is often a very messy, illogical place. So, what is the personal verdict? Should you read Reminders of Him? If you're looking for a light, breezy beach read, absolutely not. This book will ruin your makeup and leave you staring at a wall for 20 minutes. But if you're interested in a story that challenges your moral high ground, then it's a must-read. Colleen Hoover has a way of making you feel protective of characters that society would typically discard. She forces you to acknowledge that people are more than the worst thing they've ever done. It's a heavy book, but it's a necessary one for anyone who has ever felt like they were living in the shadow of their own past. The actionable step I want you to take today, inspired by the themes of this book, is something I call the three-sided story exercise. The next time you find yourself judging someone, whether it's a person in the news, a coworker, or a family member, stop and try to write 3 different versions of their story. Version 1 is the villain version, the one you're currently telling. Version 2 is the victim version, how they see themselves. And version 3 is the human version, the messy middle, where most of us actually live. By forcing yourself to see the human version, you're practicing the same radical empathy that Ledger eventually shows Kenna. It's a way to break out of the black and white thinking that keeps us divided. Reminders of Him isn't just a book about a tragic accident. It's a book about the courage it takes to hope when you have every reason to give up. It reminds us that while we can't change the past, we have a massive amount of agency over how we let that past define our future. Colleen Hoover has given us a story that serves as a mirror, one that shows us our capacity for both great cruelty and great kindness. Thank you so much for watching and diving into this analysis with me. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the themes of redemption and forgiveness, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're constantly breaking down the books that shape our culture, and I don't want you to miss our next episode where we'll be tackling another transformative story. Until next time, keep reading, keep questioning, and remember that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. See you in the next one.